Audible Archives presents The Watcher in the Ashes, another case of Detective Drake Vane's mysteries, written by Raoul. I'm Rob, your host and narrator. Let's find the clues in the dark corner of Ashford. Rain-slicked streets reflected the gas lamps like molten gold as Drake Vane stepped from the tram and pulled his coat tighter around him. Ashford had a way of clutching its secrets close, and tonight, the city seemed to lean toward him, whispering with wind and wet stone. The estate was set on the outskirts, where the urban grime of dock sprawl met the rolling lawns of the old elite. The manor's windows glowed faintly, but the light was weak, trembling behind gauzy curtains like it feared to escape. A caretaker's house sat lower on the hill, modest, almost apologetic in its design. Yet Drake had learned that the smallest houses often concealed the largest troubles. He approached the door, polished leather gloves brushing the brass knocker. Before he could strike, the door opened. A man appeared, gaunt, shoulders stooped, eyes like coal embers in the lamplight. "Detective Vane," the caretaker rasped. "Over, if the trouble then." Drake nodded. "I've come for answers." "Name?" "Garrick. Samuel Garrick. I tend the house, the grounds, everything the master leaves behind." He stepped aside, allowing Drake into the narrow, warm hallway, though the air smelled faintly of damp wood and something older, metallic. "Tell me what happened," Drake said as he removed his coat. Garrick's hands trembled slightly as he gestured toward the staircase. "It's the master, or was the master? Found him in the study this morning. Not a mark on him. No sign of struggle. Yet he's dead, sir. Cold. Stiff. I don't know why." Drake's eyes swept the hallway, noting the polished floorboards, the faint streaks of water from the rain, the slight misalignment of a framed painting. Precision, he thought. Even chaos leaves a fingerprint. "Who discovered the body?" he asked. "I did. I open the house each morning, sir. The study was locked from the inside." Garrick's voice faltered. "I only found the door slightly ajar and then—" Drake's mind was already racing. Locked room deaths were rarely simple. And Ashford's elite, especially those who lived in the old manor districts, had a tendency to hide sins behind silver spoons and polished brass. "Was anyone else in the house?" Drake asked. Garrick's hands wrung together. "No one, sir. Except the staff. Miss Wren, the cook, the gardener. They were all in quarters when I found him. None could have entered without permission." Drake nodded, making mental notes. Locked rooms, a small staff, and a caretaker who clearly feared his own shadow. This was exactly the kind of case that required patience, observation, subtle questioning, and a steady hand. He stepped toward the study door. The lock was old, brass and worn, but not broken. Someone had indeed left it ajar. Drake placed a gloved hand on the knob, feeling the chill through the metal. Inside awaited a dead man, but more than that, secrets buried beneath oilcloth rugs, polished furniture, and the impeccable surface of a well-kept manor. "Careful," Garrick whispered. "The master, he had enemies." "But I never thought." "Enemies," Drake repeated, stepping inside, "are everywhere, Mr. Garrick. Even in silence." The study smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and ink. Papers lay stacked, neat, as if prepared for a meeting that would never happen. A ledger sat open, the master's handwriting precise, unyielding. And then Drake saw it, a single envelope, pushed under the desk, edges curled from damp. He picked it up, noting the seal, an intricate emblem, almost like a spider's web. Opening it, he found a brief note in trembling handwriting. "If I die, it won't be by accident. Watch the caretaker." Drake's eyes narrowed. Garrick's face paled behind him. "Mr. Garrick," he said slowly, voice measured, "I think your work is just beginning." Lightning flashed outside, catching the study in brief white light. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting Drake's reflection in the glass like a man standing between truth and lies. Ashford had brought him here for a reason, and he intended to find it. The hallway outside the study smelled of wet wool and something faintly sweet, lavender from the staff's cleaning rags, perhaps, or something older, lingering in the manor's corners. Drake followed Garrick down a narrow corridor to the servants' quarters, each step measured, ears attuned to every creak in the floorboards. The staff were gathered in a tight circle, faces pale, hands twisting aprons and sleeves. Drake's steel-gray eyes scanned them, noting posture, hesitation, and subtle glances. Fear always leaves footprints. "Miss Wren," Drake began, voice calm but firm, "you've been here the longest. Tell me, did you see anything unusual last night?" The cook, a stout woman with hands like well-worn leather, swallowed audibly. "No, sir. Everything was as usual. Master retired early, we did our rounds." Her gaze flicked to Garrick, almost pleading. "Nothing out of place, detective." "Really?" Drake's eyes didn't leave her. "Because the ledger in the study was open, and someone left a note under the desk. It names your caretaker as suspicious." A sharp intake of breath. Wren's eyes widened. "Mr. Garrick? But he's devoted to the master. He would never." Drake raised a hand. "Oh, I'm not accusing anyone yet. I want the truth. Just the truth." The gardener, a tall, gaunt man with dirt under his nails that never fully washed away, spoke next. "I saw him, sir, Mr. Garrick, moving in the study late last night. But he said it was routine inspection. Nothing more." Drake's gaze shifted to Garrick. The caretaker's jaw tightened. The lie, or half-truth, hung between them like a spider's silk. "And the others?" Drake asked. "Any disagreements? Arguments? Threats?" A young maid, nervously twisting her fingers, spoke. "The master. He was anxious about something. He argued with someone on the phone late at night. A visitor came this morning, but left quickly. I didn't see the name." Drake's mind ticked over the details. A late-night argument, a mysterious note, a visitor no one can identify, and Garrick acting strangely protective. Something here was off, far more than a simple locked-room death. He crouched slightly, looking at the staff in turn. "I'll be honest. One of you is hiding more than fear. You may not know the extent yet, but Ashford has a way of forcing truths out in the end. You can either tell me what you know voluntarily," he paused, letting the weight of the word settle, "or I'll find it myself." The group shifted uneasily. Silence stretched until the storm outside rattled a window pane. Drake noted every flutter of an eyelid, every twitch of a hand. Finally, Wren spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Detective, it's Mr. Garrick. He's not who he says he is." Drake's eyes locked onto the caretaker. Garrick's face was pale, but his eyes burned with something sharp, defensive. "I don't know what you mean," he said, though his voice trembled. Drake straightened, revolver still holstered. "You've been pretending. Ashford streets teach many things, Mr. Garrick. Tricks, lies, survival. But hiding in a manor, among servants and masters alike, that's a different art. Tell me who you really are." Garrick's shoulders slumped. He looked from Drake to the gathered staff, then back at Drake, as if deciding whether to surrender or fight. "But I didn't mean to." Drake stepped closer, voice softening. "Start at the beginning. I can follow the truth better than any lie." The caretaker swallowed, then whispered the first fragment of a secret that would unravel the entire estate. "But I wasn't just the caretaker. I was assigned to watch him. To make sure he didn't." "Secrets?" Drake's eyes narrowed. Ashford's rain hammered against the manor walls, outside and in, the sound like warning drums. He already knew this was no ordinary death, and Garrick was no ordinary caretaker. Something deadly, something carefully orchestrated, had been waiting for Drake from the very moment he set foot on the estate. The fire in the hearth flickered, casting elongated shadows across the walls of the servants' quarters. Drake's steel-gray eyes never left Garrick, whose confession had barely begun. The caretaker's hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white, yet there was a tension in his posture that betrayed both fear and something else, calculation. "Assigned to watch him?" Drake pressed, his voice measured, each word deliberate. "Who assigned you? And why?" Garrick swallowed, eyes darting toward the closed study door, as if the very walls could overhear him. "The family. Not Lady Carrington. Before her time, sir, that was someone older. They wanted to ensure that certain dealings were kept private. But Sir Thomas was involved in matters that weren't meant for the world to see." Drake noted the slight tremor in his voice. A lifetime of training in the army had taught him to spot the difference between fear and deception. Garrick's tremor was guilt, but also loyalty. A complicated mix. What kind of dealings? Drake asked, stepping closer. Money? Threats? Something that would drive a man to disappear or die? Garrick's jaw tightened. Yes, all of that. But it wasn't meant to end like this. He wasn't supposed to die. Drake's eyes scanned the room, taking in the small details. The worn edge of a table, a scuffed floorboard, a faint stain on the carpet near the study door. Every detail a potential clue, every silence a lie waiting to be revealed. And the visitor this morning? Drake asked. The one the maid saw? Who were they? Garrick hesitated, then whispered, I don't know their name. Just that they came, asked questions no one should ask. Master, he argued. Said he could handle it. But something changed after they left. I sensed danger. He became different. Drake's mind pieced together the fragments. A caretaker secretly monitoring his master, a visitor asking questions, a late-night argument, and now a death that seemed accidental but smelled of something much darker. Ashford had a way of hiding the rot behind polished surfaces, and he could feel it here, in the heartbeat of the manor. He turned back to Garrick. Tell me, caretaker, what did you do when he fell? When your master died? Garrick's eyes flickered with shame and something darker, fear of his own involvement. But it ensured he was gone. But I moved things. Locked the study from inside. I couldn't risk anyone finding out the full truth. They would have destroyed us both. Drake's pulse quickened. Us both? Yes, detective, Garrick said, voice barely audible. I was never just the caretaker. I was the shadow of this house. My orders were to protect secrets, not people. And sometimes, the secrets demanded more than survival. They demanded sacrifice. Drake's mind raced. The story was bigger than a locked room death. This was a network of lies, of unseen hands guiding the fate of the household, with Garrick at the center. Every staff member, every corner of the manor, seemed to pulse with hidden motives. And the ledger? Drake asked, nodding toward the study door. The open ledger, the note, what do they mean? Garrick's shoulders slumped. The ledger was his record of debts. Enemies. Some debts never forgiven, detective. Some debts demanded payment even after death. Drake's eyes narrowed. Ashford wasn't a city of accidents. It was a city of debts, financial, moral, and sometimes fatal. And someone in this house had just been collecting. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Garrick's face in stark relief. Drake could see the thin line of terror, the flicker of regret. But behind it all lay calculation, a careful orchestration that only someone who had mastered secrecy could wield. Drake straightened. Very well, Mr. Garrick. You've started to tell me the truth. But we need more. Motives. Every visitor, every argument, every note that passed through this house. Ashford doesn't forgive shadows. And neither do I. Garrick's hands shook, but his resolve hardened. I will tell you everything, detective. But once the truth comes out, there's no going back. Drake nodded. I don't expect you to walk away. Only to survive long enough to see it end. The storm outside intensified, slamming the manor with wind and rain. Inside, the caretaker's confession had only peeled back the first layer of the house's darkness. And Drake knew the deeper he dug, the closer he would come to secrets someone in Ashford wanted to keep buried forever. Drake returned to the study, the storm outside hammering at the tall windows like a relentless interrogator. The room smelled of aged paper, pipe tobacco, and something faintly metallic, blood, perhaps, or rust left from long-forgotten locks. The ledger sat open on the desk, its pages neat but heavy with implication. He knelt, running gloved fingers over the entries. Every line told a story: names, dates, sums owed, crossed-out notes, cryptic annotations in the margins. It wasn't just a financial record, it was a map of favors, threats, and hidden debts. Ashford's elite rarely left anything to chance, and Sir Thomas's meticulousness made the ledger a silent witness. Drake paused at one entry, a single name underlined twice in crimson ink, Elizabeth Moore. Next to it, a faint notation, to be reminded. Elizabeth Moore, he muttered, rolling the name over in his mind. It didn't appear in the staff records. No servant by that name. Perhaps a visitor, a creditor, or someone Sir Thomas feared. Whoever she was, she mattered, and Drake had a hunch she was connected to the visitor Garrick had mentioned. The caretaker's voice broke his concentration. Detective, then if Elizabeth Moore, if she came to the house yesterday. She asked questions, too many, too pointed. Master tried to brush her off. Garrick's hands twitched. I warned him, but he insisted it was nothing. Drake's eyes narrowed. And the argument you mentioned? Garrick swallowed. It was with her. I overheard it through the study door. Words were harsh, angry. Then the master slammed the phone down. Said he could handle it. But I knew better. Ashford, it never allows mistakes. Drake made a mental note. A mysterious visitor, a late argument, and now a name in the ledger tied to some unsettled debt. Each piece connected in a web that smelled of danger. He turned his attention back to the ledger, scanning for other anomalies. A series of entries caught his eye, written in a different hand, HM checked. GC verified, awaiting arrival. GC must be Sir Thomas's initials, Drake muttered. There's someone else involved in these arrangements. He felt the familiar pull in his chest, the tug of a puzzle about to reveal a secret no one wanted unearthed. Stepping back, he surveyed the room. The furniture, the carpets, the bookshelves, all ordinary, yet they felt like masks hiding the truth. Ashford had always been a city where appearances deceived, and he suspected the manor itself had secrets built into its very walls. Detective. Garrick's voice trembled. I should tell you, there's more. Sir Thomas, he wasn't alone last night. Someone else was in the house. I didn't see them, but I felt them. Watching. Drake's pulse quickened. You felt them? Who? Garrick shook his head. I don't know. Just a presence. Someone familiar. Someone the master feared, yet trusted enough to let near. Drake's mind raced. A hidden visitor in a locked house. A ledger that hinted at debts, favors, and warnings. And Garrick, the caretaker, the shadow, the watcher, who had been orchestrating more than anyone suspected. Show me, Drake said. Everything. Every passage, every hidden nook. If someone was here last night, we'll find them, or at least what they left behind. Garrick hesitated, then nodded, leading Drake toward a side corridor he had never seen. The walls were lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow them, and small alcoves where dust had settled thickly, places overlooked in daily cleaning. As Drake moved deeper into the manor, he felt it, the weight of hidden eyes, of secrets buried in layers of trust and fear. This was no ordinary death. Sir Thomas's fall was the surface, and the real story lay beneath, a story Drake was determined to uncover, one shadow at a time. The side corridor smelled of dust and forgotten years. Drake's boots echoed on the polished wood, each step measured, each breath drawn carefully. Garrick moved ahead, muttering directions and warnings, like a man leading a stranger through a minefield. The master. He had compartments, Garrick said, voice low. Bookshelves, false panels, places where papers, letters, and valuables could vanish without a trace. I kept them hidden, boys. But last night, his voice trailed and he shook his head. Drake's steel-gray eyes scanned the corridor. Portraits of the manor's previous owners loomed over them. Their eyes, painted in oils decades ago, seemed to judge, to track, to warn. One portrait in particular, a stern-faced man in military uniform, had a faint crack along the glass, catching the lamplight like a lightning strike. Drake made a mental note. The crack could be old, or it could be recent, a sign of tampering, a struggle perhaps overlooked. Show me the first compartment, Drake said. Garrick led him to a tall bookshelf, its wood polished but slightly warped near the floor. He pressed a hidden latch behind a thick leather-bound book. The shelf creaked, then swung inward, revealing a narrow hidden passage. Drake's pulse quickened. Ashford's elite, Drake knew, often built their secrets in architecture itself. Inside the passage, the air was colder, damp. A single lantern hung from a hook, swaying slightly. Dust motes danced in the flickering light. Drake's eyes scanned every inch, scratches on the wood, scuff marks, a faint footprint partially erased but still legible. Garrick hesitated. But I didn't touch this last night. Whoever moved here, they left something. Drake crouched, examining the marks. The scuff patterns suggested deliberate movement, not a stumble. Someone had entered, searched, and left. He traced the prints carefully. Not Garrick's, he muttered. Too small, light, deliberate. Someone who knows the manor, knows its shadows. At the end of the passage was a small alcove with a locked drawer. Drake tested it. The lock yielded easily under his gloved fingers, a subtle mechanism, designed for ease by someone familiar with the manor. Inside were letters, stacked meticulously. Drake picked up the top one. The paper was fine, perfumed faintly, addressed to Sir Thomas. The debt must be settled tonight. Do not delay. Elizabeth Moore will ensure it is done. Drake's eyes narrowed. Elizabeth Moore again. The visitor's purpose was now clear. A calculated confrontation, one that had escalated into the argument Garrick had overheard. He continued through the drawer, uncovering more letters and notes, coded instructions, references to other debts, and hints that the caretaker had been privy to every movement, every risk. Garrick's role was no longer just surveillance, it was orchestration. "Detective," Garrick whispered, voice tight. "I warned him, but I didn't expect this. I didn't expect him to tell you." His voice broke and Drake looked up. The caretaker's eyes were haunted, conflicted. "Sir Thomas's death wasn't accidental," Drake said quietly, turning the letters over in his hands. "It was the result of threats, manipulations, and perhaps a confrontation he couldn't survive. Elizabeth Moore, whoever she is, came for a reckoning. And you, Garrick, you became the shadow that facilitated it." The caretaker's lips parted, silent, guilt-heavy. Drake stood, tucking the letters into his oilskin notebook. The storm outside had not lessened. It rattled the windows like drums signaling war. Ashford was never quiet for long. "Next," Drake said, voice low, "we find Elizabeth Moore. And we discover who else in this house has a reason to hide the truth." The corridor's shadows seemed to tighten around them, whispering secrets of old houses, old money, and old grudges. Drake knew the deeper he delved, the more dangerous it would become. But that was exactly where he excelled. In shadows, in secrets, and in the spaces no one else dared to see. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, leaving the streets slick and reflective as Drake made his way back into the heart of Ashford. He carried Garrick's confession and the letters like keys to a hidden vault. Elizabeth Moore. The name had begun to echo in his mind, carrying with it danger, precision, and the inevitability of confrontation. He paused at a narrow alley, consulting his notebook. The letters hinted at a visitor who knew the house intimately, someone able to enter, question, and leave without leaving more than a shadow behind. Elizabeth Moore was no ordinary guest. Drake suspected she was someone trained in observation, or at the very least, someone used to navigating Ashford's elite like a ghost. Returning to the manor that evening, Drake requested the staff gather in the kitchen under the guise of routine questioning. Miss Wren, the cook, and the young maid, Agnes, exchanged anxious glances as Drake entered, steel-gray eyes sweeping over them. Garrick lingered near the doorway, silent, as if observing a theater he had helped set. "Last night," Drake began, "someone came to this house with purpose. Their visit coincided with Sir Thomas's death. I need everyone to recall anything unusual. Anything at all." Wren's hands twitched. It was only a visitor, subtly polite, but insistent. "Sir Thomas," he argued with them, "but I didn't hear everything." "Describe them," Drake urged. "Clothes, voice, mannerisms." The maid, Agnes, spoke up hesitantly. She wore a cloak, sir, deep green with a hood. I caught a glimpse of her hands, white, delicate, but there was strength in them. She moved like she owned every corner of the house she entered. Drake's mind narrowed. A cloak, deliberate movement, strength disguised as delicacy. Elizabeth Moore was trained in subtle intimidation, someone used to bending rooms, people, and perception to her will. And the caretaker? Drake asked sharply, eyes flicking to Garrick. Did you let her in, or was she already in the house when you arrived? Garrick swallowed. But I opened the door, sir, but she spoke before I could announce myself. She said she was expected. Drake's pulse tightened. Expected by whom? Garrick's voice dropped to a whisper. By the master? Or at least he wanted her to think he did. She had influence over him. Enough to make him falter, to make him argue, to die. Drake stood, pacing slowly. Ashford's elite had a language all their own. Favors, threats, debts, and loyalties that could kill. Elizabeth Moore wasn't merely visiting. She was executing a plan, and Garrick had been forced into the role of silent witness, perhaps even enabler. Show me the visitor's route through the house, Drake said, motioning for Garrick to lead the way. We need to reconstruct her steps, her access points, and any interaction that could reveal motives or accomplices. They traced her movements, the hallway near the servants' quarters, the study door ajar, the secret passage Drake had already discovered. Each step revealed traces, a smudge of mud on the polished floor, faint perfume caught in the air, a small scuff on the rug near the hearth. Drake knelt, examining the floor. She was careful, methodical. But everyone makes mistakes. Every shadow has a footprint. We'll find hers. Garrick's eyes flicked nervously toward the closed study. Detective, I think there's more. She left something behind. Something the master didn't see. Drake's eyes narrowed. Show me. They entered the study again. Drake's gloved hands swept across the desk, the floor, and the shelves until he felt a faint ridge under the carpet. Kneeling, he peeled back the edge to reveal a small envelope, sealed with wax. The insignia matched the letters, but this one was unsigned. Inside, a single note read, "The debt is not yet settled. Others will come. Watch the shadows carefully, detective." Drake's eyes glinted. Elizabeth Moore had not left. She had planted a message, a warning, a challenge, or perhaps a taunt. Whoever she was, she had turned this estate into a stage, with Drake as her inevitable audience. He folded the note carefully into his notebook, voice low as he addressed Garrick and the staff. This isn't over. Someone orchestrated this death. Someone still in the shadows is watching. We need to find her, and fast, before the next move is made. Outside, the storm had returned, drumming against the windows with steady insistence. And somewhere, beyond the manor gates, Elizabeth Moore waited, calculating, patient, and deadly. The next morning, the manor seemed almost peaceful, but Drake knew better. Ashford's calm was always the prelude to chaos. He walked the perimeter, noting the angles of the walls, the hidden alcoves, and the servants' windows. Every line of sight, every doorway, could hide a secret or an enemy. Derek followed, quieter now, weighed down by the previous night's confessions. Drake's mind, as always, was moving faster than the rain dripping from the eaves. Elizabeth Moore had left a message. She had watched the house, and she had moved with precision. Someone trained, someone who knew when to appear and disappear without leaving a trace. Returning to the study, Drake spread the ledger and the letters across the desk. His eyes scanned each name, each annotation. One entry kept drawing him back. HM checked. Who was HM? Someone connected to Elizabeth Moore, no doubt. He would need to find out. Drake's musings were interrupted by a soft noise, a shuffle of movement in the hallway. His hand went instinctively to his revolver, though it remained holstered. From the shadowed corridor emerged Miss Wren, the cook, holding a folded piece of paper. "Detective, I found this tucked behind the spice cabinet," she whispered, "but I didn't know what it meant." Drake took it carefully. Unfolding it revealed a hastily written message. "If you value your life, watch the corridors. She is closer than you think." Drake's eyes narrowed. Elizabeth Moore wasn't just a visitor, she was inside the house, moving among them, testing him. He could almost imagine her, the green cloak, the deliberate stride, the faint scent of perfume lingering like a threat. He turned to Garrick. "She's here. Still in the manor. She wants something, or someone, and she's confident she won't be caught." Garrick's face paled. Detective, I warned the master, but he didn't listen. Now we're all in danger. Drake studied the staff. Their unease was palpable. The young maid, Agnes, fidgeted, glancing at corners of the room as if expecting the green cloak to materialize from shadow. Every servant had been questioned, every alibi checked, but Drake suspected that one among them was Elizabeth's accomplice, or worse, Elizabeth herself in disguise. He motioned to Garrick. Show me all access points to the house. Entrances, side doors, service passages, everything. If she's inside, she's moving with intent. And I need to know where she can appear next. They traced corridors, hidden stairways, and alcoves. Drake's sharp eye noted details. A floorboard scuffed differently from the others. A door hinge loosened slightly, faint traces of mud along the skirting. Every clue was a breadcrumb, a sign of deliberate movement. Returning to the main hall, Drake paused before the portrait of a stern-faced ancestor. Something about the eyes, painted decades ago, seemed almost alive in the flickering lamplight. And then he noticed it, a tiny crease at the corner of the frame, one that had not been there before. He lifted it carefully to reveal a small folded note, stamped with the same wax as Elizabeth's earlier messages. Unfolding it, he read, "You're closer than you realize. Do not trust anyone in green." Drake's pulse quickened. Green. Her cloak, her signature, her mark. Someone inside the manor wore it now, walking among them unseen. "Garrick," Drake said, voice low, "we need to observe without being observed. Everyone in this house is a suspect. Even those who seem loyal. Even you." The caretaker flinched, but said nothing. Drake already knew the truth. Ashford's elite didn't play fair, and Elizabeth Moore was no ordinary opponent. She had turned a simple death into a web of fear, manipulation, and misdirection. And now Drake was in the center, the target as much as the investigator. He stepped back, revolver lightly in hand, mind racing through strategies. Somewhere in the shadows, behind doors and corridors, the green cloak moved. And Drake knew that before this was over, he would have to confront it, or become another secret buried in the manor's walls. The manor's corridors seemed longer tonight. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, dancing with the flicker of candlelight as Drake Vane moved silently, every sense alert. The letters, the notes, and the whispers of the staff had led him here, the heart of a game played by someone far more cunning than anyone in the household. Garrick followed at a cautious distance, silent, his earlier confidence eroded by the realization that Elizabeth Moore was not only inside the house but likely watching their every move. Drake didn't speak. Words were weapons, and he needed none until the moment of confrontation. In the main hall, he paused to observe the servants as they moved. Wren was busy at her tasks, her hands steady but her eyes darting nervously. Agnes lingered near the staircase, pretending to straighten a rug, her posture tense. Every motion, every hesitation, was a potential clue. Drake's gaze fell on a glint of green in the reflection of a window, a flash from the cloak he had been hunting. His pulse quickened. Someone was watching, testing him. He moved deliberately, checking rooms, doors, and side passages. In the study, he paused to examine the ledger again. Each name felt heavier now, weighted with hidden threats and debts yet to be repaid. Elizabeth Moore was tied to this ledger. Her presence in the house, the timing of her visit, even Sir Thomas's last night all pointed toward her. Garrick broke the silence. "Detective, she's clever. She's planned this meticulously. If she wanted to leave, she would have. She's still here, waiting, watching." Drake's eyes narrowed. "Then we make her move. Set the stage so she reveals herself. Ashford's shadows are deep, but even shadows have edges." He instructed Garrick to lock certain corridors while leaving others accessible, creating a controlled environment. Every movement of the staff was now observed. Every sound noted. Drake's mind played through scenarios: the green cloak approaching a window, a footstep in a hallway, a hand brushing against a doorknob. Hours passed. The storm outside had quieted to a drizzle, but inside, tension mounted. Drake positioned himself near the staircase, watching the main hall, the library, and the study doors. Any approach would be visible, any movement calculated. Then he saw it, a faint ripple in the candlelight near the library door. The green cloak moved with deliberate stealth, testing, searching. Drake's fingers tensed around his revolver, eyes locked on the shadow. He spoke quietly to Garrick. Watch her. She's testing us. She'll reveal herself if we force the hand. The cloak hesitated near the library, then moved toward the study, pausing just long enough for Drake to see the faint outline of a hand adjusting the desk papers. A trap? A message? Or a test of the detective? Drake remained still, heart steady, mind calculating. He would wait for the perfect moment. Elizabeth Moore had chosen her time carefully. He would choose his. As the night deepened, the green cloak paused, then vanished toward the servants' wing. Drake's pulse remained even. She would make another move, one he would anticipate. Ashford's shadows had drawn her in, but Drake was already mapping every turn, every hiding place. The game was no longer about observation. It was about confrontation. And Drake Vane never lost when the rules were hidden, the stakes high, and the shadows deep. The manor was silent now, except for the faint creak of floorboards and the distant drip of rain from the eaves. Drake stood near the main staircase, eyes fixed on the corridor that led to the servants' wing. Every step he had taken, every observation, had led to this moment. The green cloak had moved with intent, leaving behind subtle traces, and he was determined to follow them to the source. Garrick lingered behind him, tense, but silent. Drake didn't need commentary, he needed precision. Every shadow could be Elizabeth Moore. Every whisper, every hint of movement, could betray her. Drake retraced her path. A scuff mark near the spice cabinet, a faint smear of mud along the skirting, and the subtle impression of a gloved hand on the railing. Each clue was deliberate, calculated, but not flawless. Elizabeth had underestimated one thing: a man who spent a decade reading enemy movements on battlefields. He reached the servants' wing, crouched low, listening. The corridor was empty, yet something drew him to a small linen closet. The door was slightly ajar, a detail easy to miss, but Drake's instincts flared. He pushed it gently, revealing a narrow space, stacks of linens, and a faint scent of perfume. Elizabeth Moore. "She's here," Drake whispered to Garrick, who froze beside him. Drake stepped inside, revolver drawn but ready to hold a command. "Elizabeth Moore," he said steadily. "I know you're here. Step out. There's no need for games." A soft laugh emerged from the shadows. "Detective Vane," a voice purred, smooth, controlled. "You're sharper than I expected. I almost feel disappointed." From the corner of the closet, a figure emerged, the green cloak, hood lowered, revealing striking features framed by dark hair. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, met his steel-gray ones. She held a letter in her hand, folded neatly, almost as if offering it rather than threatening. "Why, detective?" she asked. "Why follow the shadows so diligently? Do you enjoy uncovering secrets, or are you simply afraid of what hides in the light?" Drake's gaze didn't waver. "I follow the truth, Ms. Moore. And right now, you're the truth this house is hiding." She tilted her head, assessing him. "You don't understand, do you? I didn't kill him. I came to warn, to retrieve what was owed. But the master, he underestimated me. And now," her eyes flicked to Garrick, then back to Drake. "Now I need to ensure the balance is restored." Drake's mind raced. A warning, a demand, a debt collection, but no murder. The pieces shifted, and a larger picture began to emerge. Sir Thomas's death was opportunistic, the perfect storm of threats, debts, and human error. Elizabeth had stepped into a situation already primed for disaster. "Then help me," Drake said, voice low but firm. "We can end this without more blood. Tell me everything, who else is involved, and what was the debt that brought you here?" Elizabeth hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Very well, detective. But once the truth comes out, there's no turning back." Drake's pulse steadied. Ashford's shadows had revealed their most dangerous inhabitant, and for the first time, the pieces could be set into a pattern. But the manor still whispered secrets, and Drake knew that the final act, the unmasking of all motives and culprits, was yet to come. Outside, the storm had subsided. Inside, The tension in the air was suffocating, thick with anticipation. Elizabeth Moore was no longer a mystery to track. She was a participant in the game. And Drake Vane was ready to play until the last secret was revealed. Drake led Elizabeth Moore to the study, the storm outside now a distant murmur against the manor's thick walls. He closed the door behind them, the faint scent of damp and old wood filling the air. The ledger lay open on the desk, its pages heavy with Sir Thomas's meticulous records. "Start from the beginning," Drake said, voice low, commanding. "Who owed what, who threatened whom, and why your presence mattered." Elizabeth leaned against the desk, the green cloak pulled at her feet. Her eyes, sharp as a blade, scanned the room, assessing escape routes and exit strategies. "Sir Thomas," she began, "was a man entangled in debts not all financial. Favors, threats, promises, some of them to the wrong people. I came to collect what was owed, not with violence, but with leverage. I underestimated the situation." Drake flipped open the ledger to the page marked in crimson, her name. "And this?" She traced a finger lightly over the ink. "I warned him. I delivered letters, messages, reminders. He ignored them. The visitor you saw, me, was intended as a warning, not a confrontation. But Sir Thomas, he escalated it himself. Pride, fear, arrogance, it all played into his death." Drake studied her carefully. The precision of her movements, the clarity in her speech, and the careful phrasing revealed a mind trained to manipulate, to survive, and to plan several steps ahead. She had not acted in malice, but her actions had consequences. "What about the other names?" Drake asked, scanning the ledger. "Itchended at sea, they appear repeatedly. Who are they?" "Accomplices," she said reluctantly. "People who managed aspects of his debts, men and women who ensured Sir Thomas could not escape obligations. HM is Harold Montague, a financier. GC is Grace Calloway, Sir Thomas's secretary. Both of them knew more than they should. They were not part of my plan, yet they became pawns when the master resisted." Drake nodded slowly. Ashford's elite always played games, and debts were rarely simple. "And the argument?" Elizabeth's gaze flickered, a shadow crossing her face. "Sir Thomas argued because he felt cornered. I gave him a choice, he chose pride. I left him alive, but the situation, it spiraled. You've seen the results." Drake absorbed this. The ledger had been the key, each entry a warning, a note, a threat, but the human element had intervened. Sir Thomas's death, though tragic, was not her intent. It was the natural consequence of ignored debts and misjudged threats. "Then we have two options," Drake said. "Expose everyone involved, or contain it. Ashford thrives on appearances, but sometimes the truth must be revealed." Elizabeth considered him for a long moment. "Expose them," she said finally. "But carefully. If this reaches the wrong hands, more blood will be spilled. Ashford has teeth. It bites those who reveal secrets indiscriminately." Drake nodded. "Agreed. We proceed strategically. First, we gather the staff, clarify movements, and eliminate confusion. Then we confront Montague and Calloway. Finally, we ensure the ledger is preserved as evidence. No more hidden debts, no more shadows controlling lives." Elizabeth offered a small, wry smile. "You play the detective well, Detective Vane. Perhaps you understand Ashford better than anyone I've encountered." Drake allowed himself a small nod. "Understanding doesn't mean forgiveness, Miss Moore. But it does mean control. And tonight we regain it." The storm outside had passed, leaving the manor cloaked in the misty quiet of early dawn. Shadows lingered, but for the first time, Drake sensed a plan forming, one that could untangle the web of deceit, reveal the truth of Sir Thomas's death, and ensure Ashford's secrets were confronted, not ignored. By late afternoon, the manor hummed with a tension that could be cut with a knife. Drake had organized the staff under the pretext of routine oversight, but in truth, every movement, every glance, was being carefully observed. Elizabeth Moore remained nearby, a silent participant, her presence both a warning and an asset. Drake began with Harold Montague. The financier arrived promptly, expecting a cordial discussion, but found the detective and Elizabeth waiting. Drake's steel-gray eyes pinned him in place. "Mr. Montague," Drake began, voice low but precise, "we need to clarify your involvement in Sir Thomas's affairs. You were aware of certain obligations, yet you did not act to prevent the consequences. Explain yourself." Montague shifted, his polished demeanor faltering under the gaze. "But I only managed the accounts, detective. The debts, the promises, they were Sir Thomas's responsibility. I cannot control his pride." "Responsibility isn't just in numbers, Mr. Montague," Drake replied. "It's in action. You had the knowledge, yet you did nothing. And when Sir Thomas fell, you were complicit by omission." Montague's face paled. Elizabeth stepped forward, calm but sharp. "You knew what ignoring the ledger would cost. You did nothing because you believed the master invincible. And now, you must answer for that oversight." Drake moved on to Grace Calloway, Sir Thomas's secretary. She arrived nervously, clutching a folder. Her eyes darted between Elizabeth and Drake, realizing quickly that she was now part of the unfolding reckoning. "Miss Calloway," Drake said, voice steady, "you were aware of communications between Sir Thomas and Elizabeth Moore. You kept records, you facilitated messages, yet you withheld critical warnings. Why?" Calloway's hands shook. "But I didn't know it would escalate like this. I thought I was protecting him from scandal." "Protection?" Drake's gaze was unwavering. "By withholding truth, you allowed chaos. You are no longer merely a secretary, Miss Calloway. You are a participant in the consequences that followed." Elizabeth watched silently, letting Drake manage the confrontation. Her green cloak glimmered faintly in the lamplight, a symbol of precision and control. The tension broke only when Drake produced the ledger, opening it to the pages marked with crimson ink. "Every action, every inaction, is recorded here. This ledger is the voice of the master, and now it is our evidence. The truth cannot be hidden." Montague swallowed, Calloway paled. Both realized the net had closed, and the threads of deceit, manipulation, and negligence were being unraveled in meticulous order. Drake turned to Elizabeth. "You came here to settle debts and warn of danger, but your presence exposed hidden failures. Now, with these individuals accounted for, we ensure Ashford's secrets are preserved responsibly." Elizabeth inclined her head. "And Sir Thomas's memory? Does it matter if the truth is controlled?" Drake's jaw tightened. "It matters that the truth is acknowledged. Not ignored, not manipulated, not left to shadows. Justice doesn't require vengeance, it requires clarity." The staff, once fearful, now understood the gravity of the moment. Garrick stepped forward, relief in his eyes, as Drake closed the ledger carefully, sealing it for evidence. Ashford's dark corridors had witnessed deceit, greed, and pride, but for the first time, order was being restored. Elizabeth Moore remained silent, her gaze calculating. She had achieved her goal and ensured the debts were acknowledged, but she had also left a mark on the manor, a reminder that shadows could be navigated, but never entirely escaped. Drake felt the weight of the night's events settle on him. The confrontation had revealed human frailty, hidden loyalties, and the inevitable consequences of ignored obligations. The manor exhaled with quiet relief, though its walls still whispered secrets that only time would fully uncover. The manor was quiet now, a stark contrast to the storm and tension that had gripped it for days. Drake Vane moved through the halls one last time, inspecting corners, passages, and the spaces where shadows had once lingered. The ledger, now carefully sealed and stored, held the truth of debts, manipulations, and human errors, evidence that would protect lives and ensure accountability. Elizabeth Moore stood near the grand window, her green cloak draped elegantly over her shoulders. She watched the morning mist curl over the gardens, her expression unreadable. Drake approached, careful, measured. "You did what you came to do," he said quietly. "Sir Thomas's affairs, the debts, they are accounted for. No more surprises, no more hidden threats." She turned to him, eyes sharp but tinged with something softer. "And the consequences? You ensured no one suffers unnecessarily?" Drake nodded. Justice isn't always about punishment. It's about clarity, responsibility, and preventing further harm. Everyone involved knows where they stand. No one can claim ignorance. Elizabeth smiled faintly, almost reluctantly. Then perhaps Ashford's shadows are not invincible after all. Garrick emerged from the servant's wing, visibly relieved. "Detective, you've done more than solve a case. You've untangled a web I never thought I could see the end of." Drake placed the ledger in a secure cabinet. A web is only dangerous if left unchecked. Ashford thrives on appearances and secrets, but sometimes the truth must be laid bare. Not to destroy, but to guide. He turned to Elizabeth. "You will leave now, and with discretion. The manor is restored, the debts acknowledged, and the consequences contained. Your role here is complete." She inclined her head. "And you, Detective Vane? Will you always walk among shadows, untangling what others cannot?" Drake allowed himself a brief smile. "I follow the truth wherever it leads. Shadows are merely the paths I walk to find it." Outside, the sun began to pierce the morning mist, casting long, soft beams through the manor's windows. The storm had passed. Ashford streets would awaken unaware of the silent battles fought within the walls of the house on the hill. As Drake descended the staircase, his revolver and notebook secure, he felt the familiar weight of cases past and those yet to come. Every debt, every secret, every shadow left its mark, but it also sharpened him, ready for the next challenge. Elizabeth Moore, the green cloak that had haunted the manor's corridors, departed as quietly as she had arrived, leaving only the echo of her presence and a final lesson in precision, subtlety, and the power of unseen influence. Drake paused at the front door, looking back at the house one last time. Justice had been served, but Ashford would always have shadows, and he would always walk among them, vigilant, patient, and unyielding. The case of the caretaker was closed. But for Drake Vane, the city's heartbeat promised more secrets, more debts, and more shadows to navigate. And he would meet each one with the same measured pace, steel-gray eyes, and unwavering resolve that had carried him through this storm. You've just heard The Watcher in the Ashes, written and narrated for Audible Archives. I'm Rob, your host. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps these cases alive and ensures Detective Vane's next descent into Ashford's secrets will find its way to you. Until then, stay sharp and stay listening.